What if, in the stillness of an ordinary afternoon, the calm facade of rural life shattered into chaos as a menace descended? Imagine a man draped in the quietude of his own peace, suddenly facing a ferocious storm, a ferocity that not only challenged his way of life, but also revealed the hidden strength buried beneath his humble existence. Forces commander, now living a life far removed from the tumult and adrenaline of combat. Little did the Mexican cartel know they were about to encounter a force far deadlier than they anticipated. The sun hung high in the sky, casting its warm golden hue across the sprawling expanse of Jacob's farm, nestled in the quiet embrace of the countryside. With the rhythmic sound of roosters crowing and the picturesque scenery of fields swaying in the wind, Jacob often reflected on the solace he found here after years of service. He had dedicated his life to protecting his country, battling enemies across vast oceans and treacherous terrains. Yet now he thrived on the sweet simplicity of farming, a world filled with soil and sunshine that felt worlds apart from the chaos of his past. But still, the specter of his military life haunted him. While he transitioned to civilian life, the shadows of PTSD tugged at his psyche, and the haunting memories of war remained just beneath the surface. They were reflections of sacrifice and courage, moments echoing with intensity that he diligently tucked away in the recesses of his mind. When faced with struggles, we often compartmentalize our experiences, much like stowing away boxes in an attic, a psychological coping mechanism that allows one to breathe and function. However, it also serves as a reminder that even the strongest among us can falter. As twilight draped its cloak over the land, darkness slid in uninvited. Jacob moved cautiously about the farm, feeling the crisp evening air wrap around him, heavy with anticipation. Little did he know that this very night, the air would be punctuated by more than the usual tranquility. A group of men, clad in black, approached the periphery of his land, stealth in their methodical movements, their intentions reinforced by violence. This was not just any cartel, but a notorious faction known to create chaos and terror across borders, instilling fear in the hearts of those who crossed their path. They were drawn to the farm not only for its strategic location, which served as perfect cover for human trafficking routes, but also for its promise of riches buried beneath the rural landscape, a world they sought to plunder. They had committed themselves to a brutal enterprise that left a trail of desolation in its wake. Yet, as they planned their onslaught, they remained oblivious to the storm that brewed silently within Jacob. They miscalculated the strength of the man who stood before them. They underestimated the kind of resolve formed under the pressures of warfare, a resolve that would soon emerge with tenacity when faced with invasion on his soil. It was the sound of an abrupt snap, a leg-breaking twig underfoot, that shattered the quiet night. Jacob's instincts kicked in, honed to razor-sharp precision after years in the service. He moved toward the noise cautiously, heart pounding, breaths rapid. Years of combat had taught him the importance of staying vigilant. Every rustling leaf, every flicker of shadow had the potential to be one's undoing. As he scanned the perimeter, the familiar scents of earth and remnants of crops danced in his nostrils, but they soon mingled with something far more threatening: malintencionados. Nothing could bring a sense of dread quite like the alien weight of hostility. Jacob felt a surge of adrenaline pulsing through his veins. His military training ignited every sensory nerve, propelling him into focus like a warrior in the midst of a battlefield. Then it happened. Shouts rang out, punctuated by gunfire echoing against the backdrop of the night. From the tree line, masked figures emerged, barbaric and aggressive, launching toward his secure homestead with an intent that bent toward violence. They shouted orders, their voices outlined with cruelty as they brazenly demanded he surrender. "Get on the ground," one roared. But in that moment, Jacob felt something surface. A primal energy coursed through him, awakening the echoes of the soldier he once was. When the harrowing weight of combat had trained him for precisely this moment, now here he was, not just a farmer but a sentinel of his own legacy, uncompromising in the face of fear. Left with little time to think, Jacob's mind raced, recalling tactics he had employed countless times before. The juxtaposition of the life he had embraced against the violent incursion left him tense. It was almost ludicrous how quickly one's hopes for a quiet existence crumbled under the harsh glare of malice. But let us pull the camera back from the chaos and examine what our minds undergo in such moments. When faced with life-threatening danger, our psychological survival instincts engage in a highly instinctive dance, manipulating our fight-or-flight response, an evolutionary inheritance from our ancestors. Jacob felt that surge. It wasn't simply fear, but a deep-rooted resolve, a decision to protect his territory and the memories of his sacrifices. It shifted his awareness, honing his mind into a singular focus, and with it came clarity that felt almost euphoric. A pang of wrath electrified him as he instinctively reached for the rifle propped against the wall of his barn, an artifact of both protection and enigma. For Jacob, the rifle became a bridge between his tumultuous past and the present chaos that enveloped him. He bolted outside, adrenaline coursing, laser-focused on the figures that threatened to obliterate everything he had built. As Jacob emerged from the shadowed doorway, he found himself facing a surreal tableau, a stark contrast of his quiet farm life against the audacity of cartel men, oblivious to the raw tenacity of those they had just threatened. Jacob took a quick assessment of the situation, gauging their numbers, their movements, mentally mapping escape routes and potential defensive strategies. His mind, honed by the battlefield, calculated each moment with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. Gunfire erupted. Shattering the evening's serenity, Jacob retaliated with a calculated shot, sending a wave of fear through the assailants as they quickly huddled, scrambling for cover. The landscape changed from tranquil to menacing, illuminated sporadically by flashes of gunfire, oaths to power thrust into the night like dark poetry. It was subtle chaos interspersed with moments of clarity, a battleground that felt both foreign and strikingly familiar. In that acute silence of concentration, Jacob was reminded of his comrades in arms, the brotherhood forged in combat. He thought of the bonds sculpted amid a shared struggle. This was not just about defending his home. This was a stand, a symbolic representation of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, a reminder that sometimes evil must be confronted head-on. He navigated through the terrain with an assembly of camaraderie within the psychological fortitude born from years in the field. There was a unique power when confronting fear with the knowledge of one's capabilities, creating a sense of self that reinvigorated Jacob. None of the cartel members understood they were not simply facing a farmer. They were confronting a soldier whose resolve was forged in fire. With every shot he fired, Jacob felt a distance growing between the man he was trying to be and the warrior he had been forced to be again. The adrenaline numbed the ghosts that had haunted him, the whispers of second-guessing that clouded his mind. He reawakened as an agent of choice, surge after surge of raw, unfiltered resolve, healing the wounds time had laid bare. But desperation breeds chaos. The cartel, sensing their hold was slipping, began to disband, seeking to scatter into the threshold of night, retreating back into obscurity. Panic ensued as the remaining individuals attempted to regain control, shouting urgent orders. For them, the tactical precision they often wielded against weaker opponents abandoned them in the face of unexpected confrontation. In that moment, Jacob made an instinctive decision that would resonate well beyond the gunfire of the night. He could not allow them to regroup. It was a moral imperative driven by the very conflict brewing within him. Jacob sprinted toward the fray, intent on engaging the remaining fractions of fear. They had drawn first blood, and he wouldn't rest until he reaffirmed his supremacy over his land. As he closed in on the chaos, a burst of raw energy surged through him, pushing him to confront the fear that overshadowed his life until a singular truth emerged from the crucible of battle. He fought because he believed in something greater than himself. This notion was rooted in years of sacrifice, lessons learned under fire, and an unwavering bond with those who had fallen. But then, in a move that no amount of training could prepare him for, he saw what lay before him, his solace, the bounty of his labor, the very crops they encroached upon, the legacy he had sought to cultivate from the chaos of his past. In that flash of clarity, Jacob recognized that he wasn't defending land alone. He was repelling a force that signified a much greater threat. A threat to the dreams of families that thrived within the heart of that land. Then, just as his resolve felt impenetrable, a shot rang out. A warped sound that seemed to suffocate the world around him. His instincts ignited in a flash of awareness. The world unraveling into slow motion as he heard the telltale sound of the bullet tearing through the night. In a surreal twist, time folded as realization curled inwards, confirming what he instinctively dreaded. He ducked down just in time. The shot rang wide, ricocheting harmlessly against the back of his barn. But that missed bullet served as both a warning and a reminder. The precarious balance between victory and defeat spun dangerously close. He could taste the impending confrontation, the ugly duality of good versus evil playing out in front of him. In that heartbeat, what he had long forgotten surged through him. It echoed memories of battles fought for far greater causes and the stakes that came with them. He couldn't allow his thoughts to stray. The confrontation was only just beginning. As shadows converged around him, the surge of gunfire ignited flashes of terrified courage, a stark reminder of life's microscopic twinities. What makes us human is not just perseverance against violence, but also our escape around it. Jacob stood at the threshold of the unknown, unwritten pages laid before him, waiting for the unfolding narrative of confrontation and resolve to materialize. In that moment, everything kept spiraling toward that uncharted territory, even as he fought to uphold his home with fierce determination. The explosion of violence recasting shadows, the urging need for decisiveness challenging him down the trigger of feigned power before him. Could Jacob rise to the call of duty, not just as a protector of his newfound peace, but as a commander once more? As the dust settled around him, he felt the pulse of war begin to thrum in his veins again, an echo of the life he thought he had left behind, but now felt as real as the ground beneath his boots. The fate of the night lay in a fragile balance. Danger lurked with the potential to either define him or swallow him whole. Would he succeed in defending his legacy, disguise a tale of heroism amidst chaos, or fall prey to the relentless tide of malice? For the storm was far from over, and Jacob Martinez stood as the lone sentinel, where both peace and power hung precariously in the fray, waiting for resolution that loomed tantalizingly in the air, just out of reach. As the echoes of gunfire faded, a tense silence enveloped Jacob Martinez's farm, the tension thick enough to slice through with a knife. He felt the heat of adrenaline coursing through him. But even in the heart of turmoil, his thoughts drifted to an unexpected refuge, the love that had blossomed against the backdrop of chaos. The quiet moments shared with Maria, the woman who walked onto his farm with a spirit that reminded him of sunflowers swaying in the wind, began to flicker in and out of focus in Jacob's mind, creeping in and intermingling with thoughts of the intruders punctuating the shadows. Perhaps in an ironic twist of fate, it was this newfound love that had given him the courage to stand before the advancing storm. Yet as the echoes of violence receded into uneasy quiet, Jacob couldn't shake the gnawing concern curling at the edge of his heart. What if their lives, seemingly safe amidst the sprawling fields of corn and open skies, were now etched in danger against an unseen enemy? The cartel men, who had come seeking chaos, retreated into the night, leaving behind a taut silence that felt like a deep breath held too long. And just like that, the skirmish faded, revealing the vulnerability that lay beneath Jacob's surface, a tenderness forged in the fire of shared moments with Maria. Their relationship had begun as an unexpected alliance grounded in mutual support, but little by little, the bond deepened into something magnetic, bright, and filled with possibility. As Jacob turned to look at her, adorned with a mixture of resolve and concern, he saw how the turmoil flickered in her eyes, mingling with admiration and unyielding bravery. Maria had joined the fight. She had thrown herself into the fray, wielding the quick thinking skills she had developed in the bustling city as if they were weapons against fear. Her unexpected courage illuminated the darkness like rays of dawn breaking through the night. "We did it," Jacob whispered, almost in disbelief as he stepped closer to where she stood, the adrenaline still palpable in his veins. Maria's voice trembled, less a question and more a reflection of her underlying worry. Amidst the triumph of survival, the realization of how close they had come to losing everything pressed heavily upon them both. Survival, they say, isn't just a physical battle. It's a psychological one, too. Research shows that those who have overcome considerable adversity often emerge more resilient. Yet the scars they carry can shape their perceptions and actions. In Jacob's case, the shadows of war loomed large, a cloud that threatened to darken the joy he found in Maria's company. He was faced with a conundrum, an enticement ripe with possibility, yet laden with fear of vulnerability. Their moments together, their laughter at shared meals, the shimmering glances, and the stolen kisses felt like scattered pieces of a broken puzzle. A bright image they were both desperate to complete, yet one that now lay at the mercy of chaotic elements swirling around them. Days turned into an unending cycle of unease. The threat remained omnipresent, casting a shadow not only over their physical safety, but also over the possibilities of their blooming romance. It became clear that surviving the cartel was only the tip of the iceberg. Maria began to perceive the walls encasing Jacob's heart, intricately built around his past, his military experiences, the challenges of reintegrating into civilian life, and the fears of loving deeply again. "Jacob," she said one evening, as they tended to the patch of sunflowers blooming just outside the farmhouse, a sanctuary of color that felt like a metaphor for their lives, a riot of brightness threatening to burst forth, even among the harshest of realities. "You can't keep fighting this alone. I care about you." Jacob hesitated, torn between desire and the armor he had thickened over the years. He had seen too much. She didn't deserve the burden of his past and what he brought to the table. There were nights that remained etched in his mind, the faces of those who never made it home. The second-guessing crept in, curling in the corners of his thoughts like smoke from a dying flame. He couldn't allow that darkness to spill into Maria's universe, a universe that shone so brightly. "And I care about you too, Maria," he responded, voice threaded with emotion he struggled to articulate. "But I don't want to put you in harm's way," she echoed, exasperation breaking through like the crack of thunder in a summer storm. "Jacob, life isn't safe. None of it is. But we can be stronger together." He could see her resolve flickering, unwilling to bend under the oppressive weight of circumstance. That unmistakable spirit which had drawn him to her from the start glimmered like the setting sun, glowing over endless rows of corn, fueling the fire of what they had begun. In that moment, Jacob knew he had a choice, an awareness that perhaps real strength lay not in fighting alone, but in acknowledging love's inherent risks. Days passed, and the rhythms of their lives began to blend back into a sense of normalcy. The farm thrived under their diligent hands, giving birth to crops that surged toward the sun. Samuel, Jacob's neighbor and friend, helped fortify the perimeters, providing extra support as they reinforced the fences and ensured their safety while carrying on with the tasks of daily life. Trust bloomed among the fields, allowing nurturing for more than just plants, giving way to the affection that began to quietly weave their lives together. Yet darkness encroached once more. Tying into their newfound strength was a knot of uncertainty that tightened as whispers of the cartel's return slipped into the edges of their conversations. With threats lingering in the air, Jacob knew he had to act, not just for his safety, but for the promise of something more significant brewing in the shadows of their bond. The soft rustling of a cooler breeze danced around them as they sat on the porch, the familiarity of the moment warming the air. Jacob's heart raced, not from fear, but from determination, the urge to reveal the truth, bubbling to the surface, like a kettle teetering on the edge of boiling over. She responded eagerly, eyes wide with curiosity. "I have a history that you don't know about, one that I haven't revealed because I didn't want to bring darkness into what we have. I'm not just a farmer, Maria." "Forces," he admitted, the confessions falling from his lips like shards of vibrant glass. Reality cast in sharp contrast. Her expression danced between surprise and admiration. "You were in the military. I never spoke of it, I know. I wanted to protect you and the light we've built. But the truth is, I've dealt with foes and conflicts on a grander scale, and now these cartel members, they pose a threat I didn't foresee. I should have told you sooner, but I feared you could resist the gravity of it all. Jacob's voice wavered as he recounted fragments of his past, from the training that sculpted him into an agent of duty to the battles that reshaped his perspective. Each memory surfaced not just as a glimpse of strength, but as a reminder of the vulnerability that accompanied every victory. A vulnerability he had been too proud to share until now. "I didn't want to be burdened by that part of me," he confessed, the heaviness of honesty settling like thick fog over them. "I didn't want you to worry." Maria looked at him, tears glimmering, but not from sadness. "You think I would ever think of you differently? You're brave, Jacob. Just as you've protected your country, you protect what you love." At that moment, Jacob realized something monumental. Love itself was a battlefield that required fortitude and mutual support, an emotional alliance built on bravery. It was far scarier to shield oneself from the world than it was to accept the floundering messiness of the struggle, and the joy that came amid the chaos. But fate proved fickle. While their hearts blossomed in newfound understanding and courage, the cartel's presence loomed close. One fog-laden evening, as dusk swallowed the horizon, the shadows crept back, cloaking the farm in an ominous embrace. Jacob and Maria stood together, armed with their love and resolute determination. Fellow farmers who had rallied behind them gathered, ready to defend their shared sanctuary, their home. Yet within that alliance of strength and fortified defenses lay the potential for an even greater understanding of the human psyche. The showdown was inevitable, each breath charged with anticipation as they geared up for a confrontation, a shouting match of wills at the edge of destiny. Underneath the stars, a roar erupted amid the darkness, punctuated by the crackle of gunfire and the rising spirit of courage echoing through the night. But as the line between assailants and defenders blurred, Maria recognized an unexpected twist. Amid the chaos, she spotted a familiar face, their friend, Samuel, standing among the cartel members. The realization struck like lightning. Everything was spinning far deeper than surface fears and frustrations. Emotion surged through her veins. Betrayal cut deeper than gunfire. "Samuel," she shouted, hope laced with urgency. Fear glued their hearts in a moment of freezing disbelief. The man they had trusted had betrayed them, aligning with forces that threatened to annihilate all they had fought for. Tension tightened upon their shoulders, hearts beating with dread at the simple yet profound truth of the world. The lines often blurred between ally and enemy, stirring a cocktail of strategy, mistrust, and retribution. Roiling chaos erupted. The confrontation reached its apex, each moment filled with uncertainty that tangled in their hearts like vines choked by neglect. Maria and Jacob found themselves at the center of it all, guardians of love and resilience amidst a desolate battlefield. The shadow of betrayal met the warmth of unity forged through conflict, and the realization emerged that true love often blooms within despair. Together, they fought back, determined not just to reclaim their lives, but to protect the shared dreams they had nurtured like the seedlings sprouting in their fields. The night proved long, filled with escalating fights, shouts rebounding off the walls of the barn, hearts racing as they sought to navigate through the dark labyrinth of loyalties. With every resounding clash, with every clash of purpose, they began to learn what it meant to be vulnerable with one another, demonstrating strength not just in the fight for survival, but in the realization of what love truly requires. It meant acknowledging the complexities and the humanity that lay beneath each decision. Amidst rising tensions, as the cartel members began to retreat, Jacob turned back to Maria, eyes shimmering with fierce determination. "We'll face it together," he said softly, words laden with conviction. What had begun as fear transformed into a tempest of courage, one where Maria and Jacob found their strength bound together. Samuel, filled with greed and ambition, soon saw the error of his ways, not in terms of remorse, but in facing a truth overwhelming in its clarity. Loyalty could not be bought at a price. The battle surged forward, both one of survival and one of newfound realizations, where amid the chaos, love had indeed emerged victorious. In the aftermath, as the sun began to rise over the horizon, bathing the land in golden light, they stood resilient in the chaos, not as mere survivors, but as a united front forged through mutual understanding and unwavering support. In those moments, the realization became clear. Love, like resilience, is not meant to shield itself from vulnerability. Instead, it thrived in the embrace of honesty. Through the assault of the cartel and the fears that had tangled within, Jacob and Maria discovered the transformative power that love bore, the strength to rise even when shadows threatened to engulf them. As they embraced amid the golden fields, with the delicate dawn unfurling its beauty around them, they knew the echoes of darkness may linger, but together they would continue to endure, empowered by the fire of their commitments, transformed through trials of adversity. Their bond reinforced, forged in the flames of understanding, a radiant love pushing through the thresholds of fear and doubt. And as they stood there above the fields, a new chapter awaited, the dawn nodding towards the endless horizons ahead, locking them together, not just as a soldier and a farmer, but as partners ready to face the beautiful uncertainties of life, hand in hand, heart to heart, emboldened by all they had survived together. Fueled by the limitless potential of love, the night fell heavy over the Martinez farm, the air thick with a tension that gripped the heart. His armed forces felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on his chest like an unseen force. How quickly had life spun from the simple joy of sun-kissed fields to a night stained with violence. As he stood on his porch, the moon casting a silvery glow across the sprawling cornfield, he recalled the chaos of the cartel attack that had ripped through the quiet of his homeland less than 24 hours ago. But beyond the shadows of impending dread stood Maria, the woman who had ignited something within him, a warmth that cut through the iciness of his past. In those moments of fear, it was her presence that brought clarity, anchoring him amidst the storm. Their connection had been evident from the moment she had stepped onto the farm, bursting with life and laughter, far removed from the darkness that had echoed in Jacob's heart ever since he returned from war. Her resilience had shone through as they fought side by side to protect what little they had, but could this fragile bond withstand the impending threat? The haunting memories of war danced on the edges of Jacob's consciousness, calling into question the one thing he had fought so hard to defend, his capacity to love without fear. Jacob, Maria's voice pulled him from his reverie, a soft melody against the symphony of cicadas. She stepped closer, her golden hair illuminated by the moonlight, each strand radiating warmth. The vulnerability in her question pierced him deeper than any bullet ever could. He turned, his expression hardening against the doubt. Maria was more than just a companion. She was the light sparkling in a world filled with shadows. "If they come back," he began, the conviction in his voice surprising even himself. "We fight. Together." It was a word laden with promise, yet as he uttered it, Jacob could not shake the haunting weight of his undisclosed past. A former commander, a soldier who had seen the ugly face of humanity, and a heart that had shielded itself from affection. It was all part of the internal battle he waged daily, the war between love and fear. Perhaps love was the greatest risk of all. The days passed slowly after the attack, a surreal blend of normalcy and chaos. They fortified their defenses with every resource at hand. Maria often reminded Jacob of the scientific principle of resilience, as defined by psychologists. Resilience manifests when individuals confront adversity with a persistent attitude, making sense of their hardships and ultimately thriving. It was through this lens that she looked at their situation, urging Jacob to see the strength they possessed, rather than dwell on the lurking danger. "Every challenge can foster growth, Jacob," she vocalized one evening, eyes lit up with the fervor of determination. Thomas Edison once said that many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Yet uncertainty creaked beneath Jacob's skin like an insidious serpent, whispering doubts and failures into his ear. He was unable to reconcile his past with the hope Maria ignited within him. Days turned into weeks, and amidst the daily tasks of keeping the farm alive against the backdrop of terrifying darkness, moments of joy began to blossom. Laughter filled the corners of their home, a sweet reminder that life could flourish even when the shadows of danger loomed large. But there, woven within the fabric of their growing love, stood the heavy truth of Jacob's past unshared, the hidden chapter of his life, the military operations he had participated in, the lives he had taken, and the darkness that followed him home. Maria's trust was invaluable, and unburdening his heart felt like a demolition job threatening a foundation he was barely learning to rebuild, a shattering with potential repercussions he couldn't bear to imagine. Then came the inevitable moment that would change everything. On what was supposed to be a tranquil night, the tranquility exploded into chaos as the sun dipped below the horizon. A piercing howl of an engine shattered the stillness. The night sky came alive with the headlights of trucks barreling down the dirt road, an unmistakable signal of danger. Adrenaline surged through Jacob's veins as his instincts kicked in. "They're back," he shouted, urgency snapping through the air. Maria's eyes widened. "What do we do?" In that instant, Jacob felt a rush of clarity. He would not call for help. They would handle this together. "No time," he replied, steeling himself. He pulled her close. The two sprang into action, grabbing improvised weapons and darting toward the barn where they could fortify their defenses. In that chaotic dance, Jacob felt an infinitesimal bond solidifying between them, an unspoken understanding of trust that transcended words. But even as he moved, a heaviness settled over him, the enormity of his hidden past adding weight to each calculated move. As the shadows approached, the engine's growl morphed into the crackle of gunfire, explosive and violent. The cartel had come, and they were not holding back. Jacob and Maria fought side by side, adrenaline fueling their movements as they directed their fire into the darkness, shadows and shapes shifting against the backdrop of gunfire. Every shot echoed with a message. They believed in each other. Fear had no place in their newfound alliance. The connection they forged became a lifeline, reflecting the notion that individuals under stress often form stronger bonds. Research indicated groups that experience difficulty together are more likely to develop a greater sense of camaraderie in the wake of adversity. Yet, Jacob's internal conflict grew heavier. And then, in the midst of chaos, as they pushed back against the invaders, he saw a familiar face, the dark figure of Samuel, his erstwhile friend and confidant, standing with the cartel. Jacob's heart dropped into the pit of his stomach. He called out, disbelief etching through his voice like jagged glass. The betrayal cut deeper than any bullet. Samuel's smile was twisted and unsettling. "Didn't think I'd turn on you, huh, Jacob? Always the soldier, always the martyr." Maria looked at Jacob, shock and confusion mixing in her gaze. She was learning layers about him, tiny fragments that wove an intricate tapestry, and part of that tapestry was the man who stood against them. "Get away from here, Samuel," Jacob shouted, his power and authority emanating through his very being. But it was more than authority. It was the echo of a commander ready to protect those who could not protect themselves. In that moment, something shifted within Maria. She turned to Jacob, eyes blazing with a fire fueled by passion and resolve. "You don't have to face him alone, Jacob. Together," he echoed, the word wrapping around them like a shield. The heaviness anchored deep within him started to lift, revealing the magnitude of love and trust that poured forth. Here was Maria, not only standing beside him, but also willing to fight against the treachery that encircled them. And just when it seemed like hope might be lost, Jacob's training kicked in. He employed strategies learned in the most strenuous conditions, moving with purpose and strength, embodying the resilience they had both cultivated together. When push came to shove, when it mattered most, only love and loyalty remained unbroken. In a fierce dance of fire and chaos, shots were fired in rapid succession as he and Maria countered the ambush. The fight raged, blooming bright against the backdrop of a moonlit night, turning the quiet of the farm into a battleground that spoke not just of survival, but of the strength found in unity. As they fought, another shocking twist unfolded. Maria, hidden from view, exhibited an unexpected tenacity that left Jacob in awe. It was as if she had tapped into a well of strength that surprised even herself. They were not merely enduring. They were becoming a force to be reckoned with, a fusion of love and resilience that flourished amidst adversity. And then, among the cacophony of gunfire and shouts, the unthinkable happened. As they cornered Samuel, a moment of hesitation caught them off guard, the darkness swirling around them, and just when it seemed Samuel had regained the upper hand, Maria launched herself forward with a ferocity that rattled Jacob to his core. In that moment, in those tangled bodies of growing tension, Jacob witnessed the manifestation of something extraordinary, the unexpected bravery within Maria that radiated hope and strength. As Samuel struggled beneath her restraint, their eyes met, and something shifted once again. With the barriers of betrayal and suspicion fracturing around them, Jacob felt an overwhelming tide of gratitude surge. He shouted, lunging forward to assist her. In a symphony of combined strength and persistence, they pinned down the traitor. The battle echoed through the night, the clang of metal, the shout of defiance, and the visceral intensity of emotion binding them even closer amidst chaos. When the dust began to settle, when the fight wound down, they stood strong, united in victory and clarity. They had weathered the storm together. But even with triumph came the dawning realization that the weighty truth of Jacob's hidden past still lingered like shadows in the corners of his heart. Betrayal could crush bonds if shielded too long. Even as Samuel fled, a life lost to his own greed and darkness, the world shifted once more, and Maria turned toward Jacob. She breathed, her eyes wide as realizations dawned. Jacob clasped her shoulders firmly, yearning for nothing more than to lay bare the truth that felt heavy on his tongue. "I need you to understand who I am," he began, voice resolute, yet softened with affection. "I've been hiding a part of myself from you, my past in the military, the things I did." Maria's expression steadied, the tenderness in her gaze encouraging him to release the floodgates of all he had kept hidden. "You faced him because you care about what's ours. The man you've chosen to be matters more than what you did before." Each word deepened the tether binding them closer, an acknowledgement that love permits vulnerability. It is within this space, the intertwining of honest disclosure and shared struggles, that true intimacy blossoms. He took a deep breath, grounding himself amidst the echoes of battle that sharpened his senses. As he pulled her closer, he whispered truthfully, "I chose you." And as they embraced under the brilliance of the moonlit open sky, intertwined, hearts beating to the rhythm of shared trust and newfound resilience, Jacob realized that love, despite the adversities they faced, could shine brighter than any darkness threatening to taint their world. In that instant, they understood that life was not merely about the scars they bore from their pasts. It was about how fiercely they would protect their future together. As dawn poured into the horizon, painting a canvas of color across the sky, Jacob and Maria stood hand in hand, ready to nurture a life built on the foundation of vulnerability and strength. The future stretched before them, uncertain yet ripe with potential, weaving together a tapestry richer than they had previously dared to imagine. And so, as the sunlight broke free from night's embrace, they breathed deeply, knowing that love, amidst chaos, can emerge victorious. It was only a beginning, but it was a beginning born from strength, resilience, and unwavering trust. The world could come at them with its storms, but they would always face it together, hearts aligned, willing to carve out joy against the darkest tides. What happens when the tranquility of rural life collides head-on with the chaos of the criminal underworld? Imagine the quiet comfort of a veteran's farm, where the land has been tilled by hands once trained to navigate the battlefield. The peace is deceptive, shrouding a powerful truth beneath, a truth that could either shatter their existence or fortify it against all odds. Jacob Martinez stood at the threshold of the old wooden porch on his family farm, a rough-hewn structure that had weathered many a storm. He had poured his heart into this land, transforming it from a past riddled with conflict into a sanctuary of hope. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the fields, while the twilight sky teased the stars to come. But beyond the horizon loomed danger threatening the fragile peace he had worked tirelessly to cultivate. Hours earlier, the sinister growl of engines had shattered that peace. The air had been thick with fear as a convoy of masked men descended upon his farm, their intentions clear, a brutal ambush that spoke of betrayal and violence. Armed forces. Would this be the day he had to use the dark skills he had tried to forget? But fate had a way of twisting narratives. Just as chaos ensued, Maria Rodriguez, his fiery farmhand and the woman who had quickly seized his heart, emerged from the shadows, a beacon of relentless courage. They had both witnessed the cruelty of the world and yet somehow found each other amidst the wreckage. The two shared something unshakable, a connection that grew stronger in their shared vulnerability. Maria's fierce determination shattered his spiraling thoughts. Her voice rang out clear, cutting through the haze of uncertainty like a sword through fog. He turned to her, appreciating the lines of worry etched upon her brow, and saw unwavering strength beneath the surface. Maria had come from a world painted with loss, yet her spirit was undaunted. Her laughter had woven through the silence of his life, pushing out the shadows of his past. He asked, his heart pounding with the certainty of his words. Together, she answered, and in that moment they both understood something deeper. Love was not just about feelings. It was a force of nature capable of propelling ordinary individuals into extraordinary acts of bravery. As the night darkened, they took their positions, fortifying the farmhouse's defenses. Jacob's mind raced, recalling statistics from social psychology studies he had read. Humans are wired to bond in times of crisis. It's how we evolved. Together, they shared a narrative of resilience against adversity, fortified by instincts honed in their experiences. The air crackled with tension. Every moment stretched like elastic in preparation for release. With each heart thud, the urgency of the situation deepened. Suddenly, chaos erupted. A flash of headlights and the roar of engines signaled the arrival of their attackers. The notorious Zeta Cartel, the very embodiment of fear. Jacob felt a primal urge swell within him. This was his home, and he would protect what he loved. Shots rang out, echoing in the chilling night as they fought back, hearts pounding in unison. Maria was fighting beside him now, her courage undeniable. She moved with an unexpected grace. The farm transformed into a battlefield. Yet as they retaliated, Jacob found himself spiraling through a past he hadn't fully shared. He fought not just for love, but to keep the specter of his former life hidden. As the clash continued, Maria's strength shone bright. The psychology of fight or flight played its role deep within him. While he had been trained to meet threats head-on, it was Maria's spirit that stoked the fire in his soul. The crispy autumn air filled with the pungent aroma of gunpowder, stinging their senses yet fueling their resolve. And then, just as the tide of battle began to sway in their favor, tragedy struck. A loud explosion sent Jacob reeling and Maria hurtling to the ground. In an agonizing moment, time froze. Hurt and fear cascaded through Jacob's heart like an avalanche. He rushed to her side, checking for injuries, his voice trembling with urgency. "Maria," he shouted, panic tightening around his chest. But she rose up, shaking off debris, and, against all odds, flashed him a defiant smile. She shouted back, her eyes bright with adrenaline. Somehow, the struggle had transformed into an unbreakable bond, a raw revelation of character that revealed their deepest strengths. With renewed determination, they pushed on, taking cover behind a wall as the cartel's firepower rained down. There was a potent surge of adrenaline and fear coiling around Jacob. This was not just his fight anymore. It was their fight. They were intertwined, loving fiercely amidst chaos. In the heat of battle, clarity washed over Jacob like a wave. He would no longer be a man defined by his silence. He needed to reveal the truth about who he was. He would not allow Maria to feel indebted to him for his past choices. They were equal partners in this struggle. He shouted amidst the clamor, but before he could finish, the unexpected occurred. One of the cartel members burst through the door, a chaotic figure cloaked in darkness, only to be swiftly met with the sharp crack of Jacob's calculated aim. The threat collapsed to the ground, leaving behind only an empty echo of the violence. Fear morphed into clarity, establishing a resolute spirit shared between them. Now more than ever, Jacob understood the intricate dance of love and trust. A study in emotional psychology reveals that intimate relationships thrive on vulnerability and transparency. This was his moment, the climactic result of their courageous bond forged in fire. With hearts racing and spirits entwined, they pushed deeper into the fray, exchanging a dance of words and actions that surged power through their veins. Jacob's resolve solidified as he used his tactical skills, weaving through the chaos with the precision of a seasoned commander. He felt engaged not just with his skills, but in something larger, the shared level of risk they faced and the life they could carve together. Then came a chilling realization. Samuel, a name from Jacob's past, the childhood friend turned adversary, now leading the cartel attack against him. This was personal. Jacob's chest tightened. Betrayal cut deeper than any bullet. Samuel had turned against everything they had fought for, launching this grotesque assault against the quiet life he sought to build with Maria. As Jacob confronted Samuel, an emotional maelstrom erupted. "Why, Samuel?" His voice rang out, heavy with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "Things change, Jacob," Samuel spat back, rage boiling over in his eyes. "You chose the wrong side. You abandoned our roots for the illusion of safety. But this place, this life of yours?" The rawness of their past collided with the ferocity of the present. Jacob's heart thundered as they stood locked in a dissonance of history. Memories of laughter among cornfields turned into a battlefield strewn with fragments of their former friendship, a tragedy unfurling before them. Maria emerged silently and stood beside Jacob, embodying the very strength he had come to respect. "You don't have to let this darkness consume you, Samuel," she said, her voice gentle, yet fierce with conviction. Jacob caught sight of Samuel's eyes darting back and forth, uncertainty creeping in. The psychological paradox of the familiar and the feared waged war within him. Here was a man who had known them, their laughter, their secrets. Yet the choices had created an unbearable chasm. "Together we can bridge the divide," Jacob pleaded. "Help us heal." A flicker of desperation crossed Samuel's face, and for a heartbeat, hope surged through Jacob's veins. Would he join them? Would he abandon this chaotic life? But then, darkness clouded that light as rage swelled again. "You're a fool, Jacob!" With a sudden move, chaos erupted again. Gunfire crackled, explosions erupted, and dust filled the air, obscuring the view. Jacob grabbed Maria's arm, shouting for her to stay close. They navigated through the haze, determined to emerge from the chaos united. As the smoke slowly cleared, determination surged through Jacob. With every step forward, he made a silent vow to protect Maria, to redefine the very essence of love realization between them. He would not allow betrayal to blind them, nor guilt to overshadow their choices. Then, in a split second, everything changed. In a moment of calculated instinct, Jacob acted, pivoting around to find Samuel aiming his weapon. It was a fight between love and loyalty, split seconds stretched into eternity. With a sudden motion, Jacob lunged forward, tackling Samuel to the ground, wrestling for control of the weapon. In that clash of strength and emotion, Maria jumped in, pulling Jacob away, the essence of their unity shining bright. "Jacob," she yelled, tears glistening in her eyes amidst the chaos. Her words reverberated within him. Loving, vulnerable, standing together, their bond fortified amidst the storm. He looked at her and felt the warmth of unwavering trust pour through him. In that pivotal moment, Jacob's chest rose and fell as he made his final choice. He would not be the man defined by violence, nor carry the weight of that darkness anymore. With effort, Jacob overpowered Samuel, who lay pinned to the ground, stripped of his violence. "This isn't your life anymore," Jacob stated firmly. For the first time in what felt like forever, Samuel's face melted from rage to confusion, and for a brief moment, Jacob saw a flicker of the boy he used to know, the boy they both had once loved fiercely. "I can't go back," he whispered, the weight of realization settling on him as the sirens shrieked in the distance, fading amongst the debris. Jacob felt sorrow wash over him as he looked at Maria, his partner in this transformative journey. In that instant, a choice towards forgiveness and healing took root. "You can, Samuel." In the following hours, the storm subsided. The remnants of their battle lingered in the air, dulled by the dawn that broke through the night's darkness. Law enforcement arrived, securing the area, yet acknowledging Jacob's story and deeds. He faced turmoil and betrayal but found solace in what they had built together through everything, promises aligned with the hearts of two men intertwined in a narrative of love and war. As silence settled over the farm, Jacob turned to Maria, who looked up at him with those piercing eyes that held promise and unwavering love. All the fears and shadows intertwined in their lives now stood testament to the life they would build together, fortified by vulnerability and transparent connections. "I'm so proud of you," she said softly, reaching for his hand. And it was true. Today they forged resilience from the wreckage of their pasts. They were not defined by their struggles nor shackled by the weight of hard choices. Instead, they were propelled into the future that awaited them, blooming vibrant with possibility. As they stood together, feeling the dawn's light warm their souls, there was an unspoken understanding that love had triumphed over fear and betrayal. Their hands intertwined, and in that moment, they were not just survivors of a battle. They were architects of a promising new beginning, a bond woven through the foundations of understanding, compassion, and shared experiences. The world outside still had its challenges, but together, they would cultivate a new chapter that embraced the echoes of their past while igniting hope for all that lay ahead. A future entwined in resilience, love, and the unwavering belief that together they could weather any storm. With every heartbeat, they stepped towards a brighter dawn, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, side by side, now and for always. What if your quiet life, built upon a foundation of hard-earned peace, was shattered in an instant by a brutal reign of chaos? How does a veteran's life balance on a knife's edge when hidden truths linger just beneath the surface? In our story, the winds shift fast, dangers become apparent, and love is tested in the most unforgiving of moments. Jacob Martinez had always found solace in the fertile fields of his family farm, a place where he could silence the ghosts of war that haunted him. The land was more than just soil. It was a canvas painted with hope, laughter, and the sweat of perseverance. Force's commander, but even amidst the beauty of rural life, shadows lurked, whispering of past enemies cloaked in new threats. The sun dipped below the horizon on this fateful evening, casting fading rays across the cornfields, while a sinister darkness crept closer, an approaching storm that had little to do with nature. In the distance, the chilling hum of engines grew louder, grating against the calm that had settled over Jacob's land. He squinted, heart racing, recognizing that sound. The growl of danger had returned. It was the Zeta Cartel, merciless and ruthless. And they were heading right for his home. Maria Rodriguez, his steadfast partner on the farm, and the woman who had stolen his heart, was nearby, tending to the garden. She had a spirit that ignited hope in his weary soul. But now, that hope was in jeopardy. She shouted, her voice breaking through the thickening air. Jacob moved swiftly to her side, each step weighed down by the knowledge that their lives were about to change dramatically. "We'll defend what's ours," he shouted back, instinctively falling into a commander's mindset cultivated over years of leadership. He felt the layers of his past unfolding. The soldier within him shouted to rise, even as the simple farmer he'd become struggled with the reality of violence returning to his life. As they hurried to gather supplies and reinforce their defenses, memories of his military days flooded back, strategies, formations, the psychological truths of warfare that stressed teamwork. Like social psychology's concept of group dynamics, Jacob knew it was love and trust that would bind them as they faced the impending storm. Together, they could transform fear into resilience. The sound of approaching vehicles roared through the countryside, drowning out the peaceful chirping of crickets. Jacob and Maria eyed each other, their unspoken connection rallying them closer together, a fusion of determined hearts. They understood the stakes. It was not just their land at risk, it was their life, their love, and the dreams they had begun to weave together. Then came the chaos. Their once peaceful world erupted into gunfire and chaos. The harsh crack of bullets tore through the air, sending Maria and Jacob scrambling for cover. Dazed, they fell behind stacks of hay bales, the scent of earth and straw mingling with the adrenaline coursing through their veins. Jacob felt that undeniable rush, a surge of energy ignited by danger. This was his arena. He had faced the worst, and he would stand firm to protect what was his. The older psychological concept of fight or flight came to life. He had chosen to confront the threat head-on. As bullets whizzed past, Jacob instinctively positioned himself to shield Maria, willing to lay down everything for her. "Stay down," he shouted, grasping her arm tightly, squeezing it with the urgency of their plight. With a single nod, she acknowledged his command with that fierce determination that had drawn him to her in the first place. They inched their way towards the barn, ever watchful, hearts pounding as they navigated the chaos around them. Maria exhibited a level of courage that surprised even Jacob. She dodged bullets with agility, lending strength to their escape. Each step they took brought an ebb and flow of emotions, fear for their lives intermingled with the love that had blossomed amid the quiet landscape. In that heart-pounding moment, time warped. Every footfall was heavy with the weight of their uncertainties. What awaited them inside could alter the course of their lives forever. Fighting back the aching memories of comrades lost in battle, Jacob focused on the present, drawing strength from the raw connection with Maria. She was not just a partner on this farm. She was his love, his equal. Together, they would outlast this storm. As they reached the barn, Jacob exerted every ounce of strategy he had learned. "We'll create a defense here," he instructed, the commander in him igniting. Maria nodded, a determined glint in her eye. She began stacking bales of hay for cover, but in that intensity, Jacob realized he was losing a part of himself. His hidden past weighed on him like a heavy stone. He hadn't revealed the truth of his military life to her, the layers of history disguised as a simple farmer, but now as violence tore through their world. That truth felt like an anchor he needed to share. But before he could divulge the secrets of his past, the barn door burst open, the thundering footsteps echoing with malice. In a flash, Jacob's survival instincts kicked in. He shoved Maria behind him, readying himself to fight. The intruder had nothing but darkness in their eyes, a cartel member whose greed and ambition trumped her humanity. Jacob shouted, heart pounding as he prepared to defend his life. His military training surged forth, remembering combat maneuvers designed to protect loved ones. But just as he charged forward, Maria emerged from behind him, standing tall and resolute. "No!" she shouted, her voice ringing with strength. Her courage grounds him, a reminder that the greatest weapon he possessed was love, an intimacy formed from trust, partnership, and mutual respect. The figure lunged at Jacob, but in the blink of an eye, Maria intercepted with a fierce determination that had him feeling both admiration and awe. The attacker barely registered Maria's quick, deft movements as she sidestepped, grappling for control of the weapon. It was a moment fraught with tension, the perfect demonstration of the power of human connection in a crisis. In that electrifying instant, Jacob was forced to confront an unexpected truth. Maria had skills he had yet to fully appreciate. Her background came rushing back to him like a tidal wave. She had grown up with a similar hardship, navigating the complexities of life amidst the chaos too. And now maybe, just maybe, they were not so different after all. When they managed to wrest the weapon from the cartel member, a shift occurred. They may have been overwhelmed, but their unity was stronger than any darkness encroaching upon them. Friendship and trust blossomed amidst the turmoil. They had bypassed fear and stepped into the light of solidarity. As the fight wore on, pushing forth through waves of gunfire and chaos, Jacob finally uncovered what he had been so uncertain about. None of this, his past, his fears, mattered any longer. The love he had found with Maria could withstand any storm, no matter how tumultuous. He watched as they maneuvered together, a duo forged in fire, each covering the other's weaknesses. That psychological dance of trust solidified their bond deeper, amplifying the connection that had already begun to take root in their hearts. Finally, when the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder and the echoes of chaos faded, the last cartel member fled. Breathless and yearning, Maria and Jacob emerged victorious, albeit shaken. An unexpected wave of relief washed over them. They had not just defended their farm. They had faced shadows from their pasts that had loomed over them for too long, and they had embraced the strength of their love in the process. As the dust settled and the final echoes of the battle faded, Jacob realized that he could no longer hide the truth from Maria. He had been running from the man he had once been, hiding behind the facade of a simple farmer while swallowing the weight of his military past. But this experience undid that. Their fight had forged a deeper understanding. "Maria, I owe you the truth," Jacob said, his voice trembling. "I've held back so much from you. Forces commander. I've faced enemies, risked my life." Her eyes softened, the tension melting away. "Jacob, you can trust me. I'm not just your partner on this farm. I'm with you in this fight, no matter what haunts you. I want to know everything." The warmth made Jacob's chest swell, her acceptance wrapped around him like a comforting embrace. There was no judgment in her gaze, only a deep-rooted empathy that reached down into their intertwined souls. "I'm in awe of your strength," he continued, vulnerability hanging in the air. "Together, we faced a nightmare, and through it. I have come to see that love can be our greatest weapon." As the quiet night enveloped them in its arms, Maria took his hands in hers, fingers intertwining with intention. "You are not defined by your past. You are defined by who you choose to be. A warrior, yes, but also a lover, a protector." In the surrounding silence, everything felt renewed, reborn from the ashes of what had come before. The rustling of the cornfield whispered their hopes, worth more than ever before. Each heartbeat felt synchronized, a testament to what true love could rise to meet. They stood together, no longer hiding behind masks. They had fought battles, external and internal, fought the very enigmas that had haunted their souls. The stars twinkled above in the vast expanse, observing the growth of two souls entwined. No matter the dangers that lay ahead, they would emerge stronger together. As they settled back into their lives on the farm, they knew challenges would come. They always did in a world wrought with chaos. But they had defeated the shadows of their pasts, discovering the courageous heart of a love that could light the darkest paths. With every sunrise, they would cultivate the life they had dreamt of, hand in hand. The quiet resilience of their newfound bond promised brighter tomorrows. Together, they would carve out a life of laughter, hope, and profound connection. And while the echoes of gunfire may have faded into the solemn night air, the truth of their love would resound within them for eternity. As they stood together atop the grassy hill, overlooking the expanse of their land, they knew the true fight had only just begun, and they would face it as one, a force united in love, fiercely ready to conquer whatever awaited them. And sometimes, in the quiet moments after the storm, clarity emerges in ways we least expect. In the hearts of the hopeful, love becomes an unyielding force, a powerful reminder that even amidst chaos, together they could weather any storm. What if everything you thought you knew about your life was built on a lie, and all it took to shatter that illusion was one relentless storm? A picture of tranquility can cloak suffocating chaos, and when the darkness arrives, it can reveal deep layers of courage and connection that one never knew existed. Jacob Martinez was a man who had chosen to live a quiet life, a life surrounded by the lush greenery of a modest farm in southern Texas. Here, the land felt sacred, untouched by the chaos he had tried to leave behind. Forces, whose reputation was forged in the fires of conflict. Little did he know, the specter of violence was about to breach the sanctuary he had fought so hard to build. In a chilling twist, that very peace was disrupted one sultry evening, as shadows heralded the arrival of the Zeta Cartel. The sound of heavy vehicles, thundering engines, and cold malevolence rolled across the horizon, gliding ominously toward Jacob's property. The weight of dread settled over him like a thick fog, obscuring the hope he so deeply cherished. He unrealistically imagined that he was safe, removed from the pain of his past, but destiny had other intentions. His partner, Maria Rodriguez, was working in the garden, blissfully ignorant of the impending danger. The sun painted the sky with hues of orange and purple, blissfully unaware of the darkness creeping in. Jacob, wary and alert, instinctively felt his heart quicken, not merely from fear, but from a profound instinct that kicked in. He had faced harrowing odds before, and yet here he stood, vulnerable and terrified by the mere thought of his beloved being harmed. Maria shouted, startling him from his thoughts. "The radio's gone crazy." Even as the words left her lips, the sound of gunfire erupted in the distance, a harsh and jarring introduction to chaos. In that moment, instinct kicked in, and he felt transformed, shedding the persona of the farmer he had embraced. He was a soldier once more, the strategist with a plan, ready to protect the sacred ground that had become their home. For years, Jacob had kept his military past secret, hoping the tranquility of life on the farm would create a sanctuary for both him and Maria, away from the horrors of war. But now, as tension mounted and he sensed danger pooling like rain in the sky, he recognized the burden of that secret. In the flurry of activity, he turned to Maria. He commanded, trying to disguise the surge of panic that clawed at his throat. No longer could he afford the luxury of avoiding the truth. She needed to know the gravity of their reality. Maria, a fierce spirit as strong as the land they tended, shook her head defiantly. "You think you can protect me from this alone?" Every instinct within him screamed for her to be safe, yet he knew her determination could not be extinguished. Instead, it sparked a fire within him, blending their strengths as they braced for the approaching storm. They canceled out fear with resolve, armed with the knowledge that trust between them was just as vital as weapons of war. As they moved cautiously through the farm, using the cover of the impressive structures he had built alongside her, they were rooted in the richness of love. They fought not just against the outside world, but against the secrets that had divided their pasts. Jacob's heart raced with adrenaline. He remembered theories of human behavior, how under stress, people often reveal their true selves. The fight was born not just of desperation, but of an unyielding bond tested and fortified by adversity. The first wave of cartel members seemed certain of their victory. They swept in through the gates, bets placed on crushing any ounce of resistance they found. Yet they savored the miscalculation that had led them to Jacob's home, the unassuming farm occupied by a soldier still embodying the strategic mind of a commander, hastily masked by years of cultivating a peaceful life. Underneath the moonlight, Jacob readied himself. "Maria, we draw them in, and we fight together," he murmured, the weight of leadership grounding him as he reached for tools he once considered to be relics of a past life. With each sound echoing across the property, he felt the shoes of a soldier fit like a glove once more. Crouching in the shadows, they positioned themselves by the barn, ready to engage. As Jacob formulated a plan, Maria worked next to him, her hands steady as she gathered improvised weapons, whatever they could depend on. The tension here was magnetic, provoking pulses of vulnerability that thrummed through the air. Trust became their trade, and at that moment, they merged into a singular force. Just when it felt as if night had fallen for good, they burst forth from their positions, catching the first few cartel members off guard. Jacob found himself slipping into a rhythm, every action born from instincts honed through years of conflict. Each move he made was calculated, each strategy overlapping flawlessly with Maria's. She fought fiercely, embodying both grace and power in her responses. Yet even in the thick of a fierce showdown, Jacob could feel the profound relief of a dam breaking. No longer were they hiding from their pasts, they were embracing their strengths. The concept of unity in adversity, vital within the realms of social psychology, became palpable as they executed their tactics together. In unison they moved, in chaos they thrived. As the battle raged on, the weight of their truths began to unravel. Jacob caught glimpses of the darkness within reaching cartel members, shadows of what they themselves once teetered on the edge of becoming. They were also driven by desperation, by pain, by fear to protect their own. A flicker of compassion grazed his heart. Could it be that blind ambition delivered them into the very chaos they perpetuated? Suddenly, everything plunged into silence. Just as quickly as it had erupted, violence receded, the aggressors pouring back into the night. In the aftermath, a promise stood in the air, an unspoken truth that while rivals stood at arms against them, community and love bound Jacob and Maria deeper together, emboldened them to face fear head-on. But just as they began to catch their breath, a figure emerged. It was a cartel leader, the very one whose actions had brought them to this moment. Jacob felt the shadows of his past swell with tension. In the moonlight, they recognized him. It was Alejandro, a former commander like himself, a soldier turned rogue with a brutal quest for power. Jacob Martinez, Alejandro spoke, his tone a blend of amusement and contempt. "I always wondered when our paths would cross again. You chose the life of a farmer, yet here you are defending your land." The air became charged, tainted with an unbearable energy as Jacob squared his shoulders, his heart surging with both anger and confusion. This encounter exposed a crack in Jacob's carefully curated existence. Within these shadows, personal history intertwined with battlefield strategies, leading to a confrontation that teased at every layer of vulnerability in Jacob's heart. Jacob exclaimed, echoing the old frustrations that rumbled through unresolved friendships lost to violence. "This isn't who you are." Alejandro stepped forward, twisted by ambitions darkened by transgressions of a different kind. "And what did you become? A farmer? A ghost of what we could have accomplished." The piercing engagement illuminated their shared past, a twisted display mingling loyalty with betrayal. Jacob felt the unraveling of the man he used to know, confused by what had driven Alejandro to such extremes. Friendships forged in the heat of war had decayed into power struggles tangled with pain, chipping away at humanity. But as they faced off, Maria positioned herself beside Jacob, her face resolute. "The mission worth fighting for lies in love, respect, and the lives we choose to guard. Look around you." The words slipped like molten gold into the air, striking like lightning against the darkness. There, amidst the remnants of rage and past coexistence, something flickered. The memories of camaraderie drowned out the din of violence, propelling the cycle of despair into the unknown. In that shocking twist, Alejandro paused, brow furrowing as the light shone on this eternal battle within. Their eyes danced across the glistening truths. Once brothers in arms now stood as adversaries, yet a path remained illuminated by love and shared vulnerability. "Maybe I was a fool," Alejandro whispered, a stark contrast to the bravado he had carried into the night. This unguarded moment hung between them, a surreal balance allowing for multifaceted perspectives to emerge. The most unanticipated truths surfaced, layers rippling back toward an undeniable hope. "I can help you, Alejandro," Jacob said, voice steady, tempered by the lessons they had fought through tonight. "But it starts with you fighting against this cycle. Leave this world behind and come back to find who you truly are." Before they could fade into confusion, the deep-rooted promise flickered alive. The wealth of emotional intelligence had ignited passion within, morphing enemies back into allies. Disparate paths crossed anew, a twist of fate paved with fragments of their shared pasts, blurring the lines between right and wrong. Under the night sky, as tensions eased and clarity flooded in, love and understanding spilled forth, lighting the flickering shadows of fear. Maria glanced between the two men, realizing that redemption did not dwell solely in the feathered paths of confrontation, but also in gentle hands willing to guide the way. And just when the air felt saturated with possibility and hope, the screech of sirens echoed in the distance, a harsh reminder that the world outside remained unforgiving. The darkness hadn't vanished, it lay in waiting. The cartels had retreated but had not been extinguished. Maria asked, stealing a glance at Alejandro, who wore the heavy mask of regret. Together they had woven emotions into resilience, but it was clear the journey was far from over. "We unite," Jacob declared, resolve strengthening within him as they faced the uncertain horizon. Their entwined fates led them down a path riddled with uncertainty, but they strode forward together, knowing that time would carry with it both love and trials. They harbored a powerful weapon, now love entwined with hope, a force bold enough to change the world, one step at a time. As the wind rustled through the fields, they understood this was only a chapter in their life, one shared journey ignited by an unexpected twist in the road. Together they would forge ahead, ready to face the encroaching storm. Through the embrace of darkness, the stars shone brightly above them, a beautiful reminder that even when paths stratify, connection can forge the way once again. It wasn't merely about survival. It was about building a future knit together by choices made in the fires of adversity. As the crowd of night deepened, they braced against the storm that awaited them, eager to rewrite the narrative of their lives. Love didn't shield them from struggles. It forged an unwavering bond amidst the surging tides of despair. Hand in hand, They stepped into tomorrow, hearts aligned, destinies intertwined, as they faced the world together. What lay next? Perhaps redemption, friendship, and inevitably, a greater love awaited them on the horizon, dictated not by violence, but by hope and connection, the truest foundation of enduring resilience. In the quiet moments that followed, amidst the aftermath of danger and uncertainty, they found comfort not only in each other, but in the transformative power of love. That, after all, was the greatest weapon of all.